So let me tell you about Eric Smith. Graduating from Judge Kaysen's AOT court changed Mr. Smith's life forever. His time in court helped him to stabilize and recover from bipolar disorder. Since that time, he has graduated with honors with his bachelor's degree in psychology, earned a master's degree in social work, and is now a nationally recognized mental health advocate, public speaker, and consultant. Mr. Smith has spoken to law schools and legislatures across the country, and his story has been written about many books, including Bedlam and the 2022 book, You Are Not Alone, The NAMI Guide to Navigating Mental Health. Mr. Smith also wrote a chapter about being incarcerated without treatment for severe mental illness in the 2022 anthology, Navigating Bipolar Country, a book that has reached #1 in Amazon's new releases in 5 categories. Mr. Smith's chapter in this book has graciously been provided to you free of charge in your electronic materials today. Help me welcome Eric Smith.
Thank you. Psychotic, high school dropout, drug addict and jail inmate. My name is Eric Smith, and all of these terms accurately describe my life before assisted outpatient treatment, otherwise known as AOT. I could have never dreamed of living a happy and healthy life without people like each and every one of you who are here today. People in professions that live at the incredibly busy intersection of the criminal justice system, civil proceedings, and mental illness, whether severe or otherwise. You are heroes with the power to create progress, and I thank all of you for generously sharing your time today to learn from this valuable judicial summit. Without question, AOT saved my life. A more accurate statement is Judge Oscar Kaysen's brand of AOT saved my life. I clarify this point with an understanding that what AOT looks like in one geographic area can be much different from what it looks like elsewhere. By the time I'm done speaking today, my hope is that each of you see how my life's trajectory was changed by a thoughtfully implemented AOT program with a judge playing an active role as part of my treatment team, and how it can do the same for others as a means for liberation from severe mental illness for people like me. I've been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder by psychiatrists who've seen me as a psych inpatient, and I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder by psychiatrists who have not seen me as a psych inpatient. Both of these diagnoses are forms of severe mental illness, otherwise known as SMI. I nor any of my doctors over the years understood the full seriousness of my SMI until my mid-20s, at which point I fell so ill, so psychotic, that inpatient hospitalization became necessary for me in 2009. Leading up to my first inpatient psychiatric hospitalization, I didn't drink water because I thought it was poison, and I didn't eat anything other than butter because voices in my head told me that was the only food that would not kill me. I also sat awake for 3 nights in a row surfing the internet for clues about threats against world leaders before showing up at my local FBI office, where I delivered a psychotic rant to several FBI agents. I hope they're not here today, but if they are, stand up. No, I'm just here. Yeah. After my rant, one of the agents asked me if I had been prescribed psych meds. I had a bottle of meds in my pocket that I took out and slammed down on his desk. So he told me I needed better treatment for mental health professionals, and he was right. If anyone's keeping a tally of, like, if you've seen me speak before and I don't make it through without crying, this was going to be the first. So if you hear tears, that's just on par, y'all. I'm sorry. All right, so what you just heard is a great jumping off point to talk about something by the name of anosognosia, which we have heard today with several pronunciations. Anosognosia is a condition experienced by people like me with SMI that prevents us from being able to perceive reality due to changes in our brain that are similar to how people with dementia cannot perceive reality. In other words, I and others like me are not in denial. And I know we kind of talked about that earlier, like, are we unwilling, are we denial? And it isn't that, not for the folks who have anosognosia, not for me. So we're experiencing this brain-based impairment related to SMI that can prevent us from understanding we're ill and need medical treatment, and that was the case for me. I fully believed I was working with the FBI and that I was a code breaker for them, and to me, this was reality. Before AOT, my consumer voice, if you want to even call it that, was adamantly opposed to receiving treatment and care, but not because I was actually opposed to it, so much as I was ill to the point I was incapable of understanding my need for treatment and care, and AOT, as I experienced it, helped turn that all around. Now, there are polarizing stances that exist about a person's rights in the context of court-ordered treatment, so let's further address that. Picture a healthy adult driving in a car down a highway at 90 miles an hour. This person knows they could get stopped and ticketed by a police officer. They know they might get into a serious accident. This person has made some sort of risk-benefit analysis, if even only at the most basic of levels, and that they're aware of likely or potential outcomes from their choice to speed down a highway. Now picture me speeding on a highway 90 miles an hour in the midst of psychosis and anosognosia. I have no fear of being ticketed by police because I'm convinced that my elevated status working with the FBI will mean I have authority over police. And on top of that, I fully believe I'm being chased by spies from other countries, so I have to speed to get away from them. This is what lack of insight looked into my illness at certain times. I had no way to comprehend I was ill and no way to know I was living in a dangerously false reality. People with untreated and undertreated SMI, like me, are often incapable of making the type of risk-benefit analysis wherein outcomes and consequences in reality can be understood. When you're busy hallucinating, being delusional, and are otherwise psychotic, it is not possible to engage in the type of conscious awareness that allows a person to understand the implications of not getting and adhering to treatment. It also doesn't help when paranoia and voices are suffocating one's ability to perceive reality, and please believe me because I lived it. Psychosis and anosognosia stole my ability to make rational choices. For me and for many others, AOT helps address and manage our illness and anosognosia so we can live in the community and pursue our hopes and dreams, even with a history of treatment non-adherence as part of the picture, as was the case for me. As you hear this, please understand, the most involuntary and coercive thing I've ever experienced is not when I was committed as a psych inpatient, and definitely not AOT. The most involuntary and coercive thing I've ever experienced is my own unmanaged SMI forcing me to do things I would never do now that I'm of sound mind. The force and coercion I needed to be protected from was my SMI, and once I was stabilized as a psych inpatient, AOT is what helped me live safely and freely in the community, helping me defeat the force and coercion of my insanity. Now, of course, not everyone with SMI needs AOT, but it's a tool for people like me, and I needed it. And there are many others in each of your respective counties who are suffering right now at this very moment, and they need AOT as well. My parents, psychiatrists, the FBI, Secret Service, I know y'all won't stand up if you're here. Yeah, but I interacted with them. Well, that's wild. That's a whole other 15 minutes on another day. And others I interacted with could all see how psychotic I was, and they all told me in one way or another that I needed medical care for my severe mental illness. But I was convinced they were all wrong and that I was totally sane and saving humanity from the next world war. In my case, I entered into AOT during a critical period of treatment and recovery, the time when I was stable enough to no longer require inpatient psychiatric care, but not yet fully able to comprehend the need to remain engaged with treatment as a means to prevent me from being a danger to myself. This critical period I'm describing here is not unique to me. It's shared by others entering into AOT. So a brief overview of what AOT was like for me. My responsibility, simple. Take my meds as prescribed, show up to my AOT hearings. It was one hearing per week to start with, and that moved on to once per month until I was ready to graduate out of AOT. The purpose and goals for me while I was in AOT, essentially about evaluating my mental health and my ability to function. And you might ask yourself how this was done. And we heard a bit about it today. Professionals on my AOT team would get to judge that for themselves at these hearings, collaborating with one another. And each hearing acted in a way to help be a gatekeeper of sorts between myself and society, confirming that I still no longer required hospitalization, helping decide whether or not I could move to less frequent AOT hearings, and preparing me for reintegration back into society without need for further court-mandated involvement. When I no longer needed AOT, it was easily terminated by the judge and psychiatrist. My AOT treatment team worked hard so that I wouldn't need them anymore, and my family wouldn't need them anymore, so that I could live freely, happily, and healthy without SMI governing my thoughts and behaviors. A main part of my AOT hearings was about ensuring I was taking my meds as prescribed, and if I was taking meds as prescribed but decompensating, the team could keep an eye on that and weigh options if and when I was falling away from sanity. and the treatment team's ability to intervene early because of their close monitoring was a key ingredient at my recovery. At these hearings, Judge Kazin would ask, "Eric, are you taking your meds as prescribed?" And I'd say yes. And I have clear memories of sitting there wondering how he or anyone else could possibly know if that's true. They would know. If any of you have ever seen someone with SMI not on meds or on meds that aren't working well to manage symptoms, you understand it can be pretty obvious when someone is presenting as a danger and not sane, as I was at certain times. So when I was asked by the judge during my AOT hearings whether or not I was taking my meds, looking back, it was probably more about if I was appearing to be safe and sane to the team sitting in the room, these professionals working with another and with me, than whether I said yes or no. As I'm describing this, the picture I'm intending to paint from my experience in AOT is that the hearings were always civil by name and in action, guided by evidence-based practices and compassion, and an understanding that strong AOT program like I was in is the gold standard for helping people like me. Again, not everyone with SMI, but for folks like me who weren't helped on the front end, perhaps fell through the cracks, or perhaps just the voluntary services weren't effective without that added component of having a judge, that black robe effect. My voice mattered at each one of these AOT hearings. Each of my AOT hearings started with me being asked by the judge how I was feeling and was open to anything at all I wanted to share or discuss. And when my meds were working well to manage my symptoms but giving me bad side effects, and boy, that happened, I shared that with the team, and it quickly turned into a change in my prescribed med regimen. Some of the most thoughtful memories that I have are sitting across from Judge Kazin in my AOT hearings, seeing and feeling him invested in my well-being and using his authority to help me achieve my goals that I couldn't accomplish without him and the rest of my treatment team. When called upon to take part in the AOT hearings, I entered a conference room, not a courtroom. And in that conference room was my AOT treatment team ready to have a conversation with me about my progress, my goals, and how I was doing. I know there are AOT hearings that are actually held in courtrooms, and I imagine that they can be effective even if they are in a courtroom. Now, that said, my treatment team purposefully distanced AOT from looking and feeling like a criminal matter, and even though I couldn't fully comprehend that at the time, it meant the world to me, and it still does. Nothing about AOT violated my rights, and to be perfectly clear, AOT is what allowed me to be free and enjoy my rights by removing the suffocating nature of my severe mental illness. AOT, as I experienced it, especially with the judge, as active in the process as Judge Kazin was with me and my fellow AOT participants, provides necessary layers of accountability to assist with treatment non-adherence and anosognosia, all without the punishment on the table. The relationship between the judge, doctor, social worker, and the entire AOT treatment team completely changed my view of managing my illness and also my ability to manage my illness. My loving parents and expertly compassionate treatment providers remained involved in helping me explore all avenues of voluntary care and treatment in my pre-hospitalization and pre-AOT years. But love and voluntary care were not a solution for my SMI, nor is love and voluntary care a solution for others with SMI who were like me. What is a solution for me and others like me is a thoughtful AOT program. After more than 10 years of typical voluntary treatment avenues failing me, I lost faith in treatment providers. Since the AOT program I was in relied on the judge playing an active role in communication about my treatment plan with me and the AOT treatment team, I was able to place trust back into treatment providers I lost faith in because the judge's authority resonated with me in a way that no treatment provider could without the involvement of the judge. What I'm describing here about the effectiveness of the civil court order and positive influence of the judge is known as the black robe effect, as we've heard today a few times in the context of AOT. Without Judge Kazin's brand of AOT, I would have continued on my path of not seeking out treatment providers, not trusting treatment providers, and without AOT as a step-down care from my psychiatric hospitalization, I would have stopped taking the medication I need to no longer be a danger to myself. Thanks to Judge Kazin's AOT, I finally made strides toward health and happiness and away from the relentless torture of my insanity. AOT is not just a program or a law. It's a lifeline to escaping the confines of insanity. AOT involves the combined teamwork of people like you who are here today, who recognize that meaningful collaboration rarely makes things worse and often makes things better. AOT is a testament to the power of teamwork across various professions, and the multi-pronged approach of various professions collaborating with one another makes sense given the complex nature of issues stemming from severe mental illness and anosognosia. The fact that AOT relies on civil, non-criminal court proceedings is essential to maintaining dignity and respect for those who are suffering from SMI like I was, and that we aren't forced to commit a crime before getting the help we need. The criminal justice system is neither designed nor equipped to properly treat and remedy matters of severe mental illness, but AOT is. My parents lost more than 10 years of their lives trying to help me get my SMI managed, and like many other parents and family members, that's time they did not really have. Hi, Mom and Dad, they're actually watching right now. Yeah. So AOT took me from a path of delusion and danger to graduating magna cum laude with a BA in psychology, followed by earning my Master of Social Work degree with a cumulative 4.0 GPA. Thank you. Thank you. Those were my goals, not the AOT treatment team's goals. The treatment team got me to a point where I could achieve what I wanted by getting me the help I needed. The help I got from AOT is the help that other people like me need, and that gets done by thoughtfully implementing AOT with careful considerations to some of the pushback we've heard today as well. I really mean that. And understanding that AOT is how our society can best address many of the complex issues related to SMI that cannot be resolved by traditional voluntary services, no matter how spectacular they are. I'm not saying if you aren't doing AOT exactly like Judge Kazin that it won't be successful, but what I am saying is everything before Judge Kazin's brand of AOT in my life was a long list of failed attempts over many years to free me from the grip of severe mental illness. So I reflect on my life like this. I was diagnosed with severe mental illness, dropped out of high school, initially failed out of college, I became addicted to various street drugs, and was committed as a psych inpatient. Then Judge Kazin's AOT comes along as a safety net and helps me beat those odds stacked against me. Without that, we know what my trajectory looked like. We've seen it talked about in data points today, in numbers, and in stories as well. The downward spiral I was on would not have stopped until it put me 6 feet under, and if not, that certainly would have prevented me from finding health, happiness, and personal success. If any of you have questions or comments you'd like to discuss with me, please reach out and ask me, write to my face via email to the event's organizers, and I'll be glad to respond and help if I can. Again, thank you to everyone here with an interest in creating progress, and I hope you feel inspired and motivated by what AOT can do and what you can do. Thank you.